Welcome to Fun Facts Daily, your source for just the good stuff. Monday through Friday, we're bringing fun facts and news you can use, all carefully curated to uplift and inform. So give yourself a break, relax, and learn something awesome in just a few minutes every day. Hi everyone, I'm Kyle Wood, and today we're going to be learning all about the bass. But before we get into the facts, let's warm up our brains with a little challenge to see if you can tell fact from fiction. Consider this. Look at any symphony orchestra's string section, and you'll see violins, violas, cellos, and double basses all sitting together. These instruments share a distinct shape, wooden bodies, and standard playing techniques using a bow. With all they have in common, a lot of audiences and musicians tend to think of them as one big family of instruments. What do you think? Is the double bass really part of the violin family? We'll find out at the end of the episode. Now for your word of the day. Our word for today is luthier. That's Luthier. A luthier is a person who builds and repairs stringed instruments that have a neck and a sound box. The word applies to makers of the upright double bass, the acoustic bass guitar, and the electric solid body bass. Luthiers work with various types of wood, select the grain patterns, carve the instrument bodies, and assemble the necks, fingerboards, and bridges. They also perform maintenance tasks like fret leveling, neck adjustments, and body crack repairs. The word luthier comes from the French term luth, which translates to lute. A lute is an old stringed instrument with a vaulted back and a plucked neck. By the 16th century, the French began using the term luthier to describe anyone who constructed lutes. Over time, as lutes became less common and bowed or plucked instruments like the double bass and bass guitar gained prominence, the meaning of the word expanded to cover the makers of these modern stringed instruments as well. Time for your daily high five, our top 5 fun facts about the bass. Number 1. The electric bass guitar was invented in the 1930s to help musicians be loud enough to be heard in jazz bands. In 1936, a musician and inventor named Paul Tutmarc created the first electric string bass in Seattle, Washington. He recognized that upright bass players in jazz ensembles weren't loud enough to compete with horn sections and drummers. He designed a solid body instrument made of black walnut and attached an electric pickup to amplify the sound. The pickup converts the string vibrations into electrical signals that are then sent through a loudspeaker. The resulting instrument, named the Model 736 bass fiddle, was produced by the Audiovox Manufacturing Company. Unfortunately, Tutmarc's invention didn't achieve immediate commercial success. Sales were low and the instrument faded into obscurity for almost 2 decades. Then, in 1951, Leo Fender introduced the precision bass, a mass-produced electric bass that revolutionized popular music. Fender's design had frets along the neck, allowing players to hit notes with perfect intonation, hence the name precision. It gave bassists the portability and volume they needed, shaping the sound of modern music. Number 2. The largest playable bass instrument is the octobass. It's over 11 feet tall. A French instrument maker named Jean-Baptiste Vuillaume built the first octobass in 1850 in Paris. This massive stringed instrument measured 3.48 meters or 11 feet 5 inches in height. Because of its extreme size, the player has to stand on a special platform just to reach the strings in the bow. And instead of pressing the strings directly with their fingers, they operate a system of hand and foot pedals. These pedals activate a complex mechanism of levers and clamps located along the neck of the instrument. When the player engages a pedal, a clamp presses down on the string to change the pitch. The octobass produces a fundamental frequency of just 16 Hz, which borders on infrasound, meaning it's too low a frequency for a human to hear. So, why make such a low sound? Listeners perceive these low notes as physical vibrations in their body rather than audible pitches. Today, the Montreal Symphony Orchestra has a modern replica and occasionally incorporates it into live orchestral performances so people can feel the music. Number 3. Bass frequencies travel further and penetrate barriers more effectively than high frequency sounds. Sound travels in waves, and the notes produced by a bass instrument have long wavelengths and low frequencies. A low E note on a standard bass guitar vibrates at 41.2 Hz, generating a sound wave that's about 27 feet long. These long, slow-moving waves have a significant amount of acoustic energy. When the waves encounter physical obstacles like walls, doors, or floors, they don't scatter or absorb easily. The low-frequency waves can push through dense materials. This is why you hear the bass lines of a song from passing car while the vocals and treble instruments are hard to make out. High-frequency sounds have short wavelengths that lose energy quickly and bounce off solid surfaces. Engineers in recording studios have to spend a lot of time, energy, and money designing acoustic traps to control and contain these resilient bass frequencies. Bass traps are placed in the corners of rooms to absorb the excess low-frequency energy. The structural design of concert halls also accounts for this phenomenon to ensure the low-end notes of the double bass section reach the back rows without overwhelming the whole room. Number 4. Standard tuning of a bass actually matches the guitar in standard tuning, just an octave lower. Both the double bass and the standard bass guitar use an EADG tuning system. The lowest, thickest string is tuned to E, followed by A, D, and G. This sequence represents a tuning interval of perfect fourths. When you compare this setup with a standard 6-string guitar, the bass mirrors the notes of the guitar's lowest 4 strings, but the bass strings are made to vibrate at exactly half the frequency of their guitar counterparts. This drop in frequency places the bass notes a full octave below the guitar notes. This consistency in the tuning layout allows musicians to easily transition between the guitar and the bass with a basic understanding of the fretboard. Sheet music for the bass, though, is structured a little bit differently from other instruments. To read their music, bassists utilize the bass clef on standard sheet music. The bass clef positions middle C on the first ledger line above the musical staff. This notation prevents the music from requiring excessive ledger lines below the staff, making the sheet music just a lot easier for people to read. And our 5th and final fun fact for today: the percussive slap bass technique was developed to compensate for the absence of a drummer in a small band. In the late 1960s, a musician named Larry Graham played the electric bass in a trio with his mother, who played the piano. When the band's drummer quit, they lost the rhythm section for their live performances. Graham decided to add a percussive element to his bass playing. He began striking the lower notes with the side of his thumb to mimic the deep thud of a kick drum. He paired this thumb strike with plucking of the higher strings with his index finger and let them snap back against the metal frets. This snapping motion created a sharp crack similar to a snare drum. Graham's thump and pluck method created a highly rhythmic, percussive sound that revolutionized the role of bass in pop music. The technique quickly spread across funk and other genres. Now, I should point out that while Graham was an innovator and very influential, the slap bass method actually has roots that stretch back before his time. Upright bass players like Bill Black in early rockabilly and various jazz musicians were experimenting with slapping the strings to cut through the mix as early as the 1920s. Now for some news you can use. If you're learning to play the bass guitar, you might experience some cramping or fatigue in your fretting hand. One way to alleviate this pain is to focus on the position of your thumb on the back of the neck. Many beginners try to wrap their thumb over the top of the fretboard, or they have their thumb off to the side perpendicular to the other fingers. Poor placement of the thumb forces the wrist into a sharp angle. This poor posture compresses the tendons and reduces the stretching capacity of your fingers. Instead, position your thumb flat against the middle of the back of the neck, directly behind your middle finger. Keep your wrist straight and relaxed, allowing your fingers to arch naturally over the fretboard. This technique will use the leverage in your hand rather than relying on muscle squeezing to press the heavy strings down. You'll exert less effort, increase your playing speed, and prevent long-term repetitive strain injuries. And on the topic of injuries, the most common complaint among new bassists and really any stringed instrument players is the pain in the tips of their fingers. For that, you just gotta be patient. Over weeks and months of regular practice, the epidermis on your fingertips will undergo a process called hyperkeratosis, which produces extra layers of tough skin cells. The tougher, calloused skin will eventually protect your nerve endings to relieve any discomfort. Interestingly, the calluses will also make your playing sound better. The harder skin produces a brighter and more articulated sound when the finger strikes the string. So take care of those calluses and avoid prolonged exposure to warm water before playing, because water softens the keratin and risks tearing those protective calluses. Finally, the moment you've been waiting for. At the beginning of the episode, I asked, does the double bass belong to the violin family of instruments? Well, not really. This one's a fallacy. The double bass looks a lot like a big violin or cello, but it actually descends from the viola da gamba family, commonly known as the viol family. Gamba translates to leg in Italian, meaning these instruments were played resting upright between the knees. Conversely, the violin family stems from the viola da braccio, meaning viol for the arm, because they were held up under the chin. Viols have flat backs and sloping shoulders, whereas violins feature curved backs and rounded shoulders. Also, the double bass is tuned in fourths, E-A-D-G, as I said before, and that is a historical hallmark of the viol family, while violins, violas, and cellos are all tuned in fifths. Although modern double basses sometimes incorporate violin-shaped corners due to centuries of instrument design blending, their structural roots and tuning systems place them firmly in the viola da gamba family. Now, I hope you enjoyed learning a bit about the bass with me today, and be sure to tune in every weekday for even more fun facts. Fun Facts Daily is an Airwave Media podcast. It was written, recorded, mixed, and edited by me, Kyle Wood. Thanks for sharing a part of your day with me. Be sure to follow Fun Facts Daily on your favorite podcast app so you can keep the good stuff coming your way every day. And if you like the show, please do me a favor and leave a kind rating, review, or just tell your friends about it.